just to be disruptive for my own team, it just didn't make sense to me.
I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want to be a lawyer. I didn't want to be a dentist. I didn't want to be, I wanted to play ball.
It doesn't matter what your record was last year or the talents you bring to the table. You got to come out and you got to compete every week.
Most DBs don't talk to me that much, so.
Why? Because you don't respond?
Yeah, probably because I don't say anything and I don't acknowledge that. I just go out there and play.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but do not fear. Stay faithful. God got you.
Wide receiver is a position known for divas. These guys are expected to demand the ball, complain when they don't get it, and find ways to grab fan and media attention. But this isn't true for everyone who played wideout. Some of these guys are not after the headlines. They are after championships, consistency, and true on-field greatness.
Isaac, correct me if I'm wrong, but for us it was about winning.
This guy knows what I'm talking about.
Because of this, they can be overshadowed or go unnoticed as the media prefers their louder peers.
Look at me, son. It's not your fault.
But then again, that's why I'm making this series, to appreciate superstar players who didn't get the shine they rightly deserve.
In this lifetime, you don't have to prove nothing to nobody except yourself.
Welcome back to Unlikely Success. Like, comment, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Today, we're going to cover more wide receivers that were overlooked because of their situation or personalities, but they found a way to dominate nonetheless. Now, let's start with the name that played his career the earliest and work toward the name that has taken the field most recently on Sundays. Isaac Bruce, a humble Hall of Famer. Isaac Bruce was a man who let his game do all the talking. His journey to becoming an NFL star began at the University of Memphis, where he showed glimpses of what was to come. He had what would be considered modest production in today's college standards, but his talent was undeniable. The LA Rams would draft him at the top of the second round in 1994, and this was no throwaway pick. Bruce wasted no time making his mark. In just his second season, he went off for 119 catches, 1,781 yards, and 13 touchdowns, a stat line that still ranks as one of the greatest in NFL history. It also predated the Rams' greatest show on turf era. Bruce had speed, excellent route running, and the ability to make acrobatic catches. It made him a nearly unstoppable weapon for the Rams. Unfortunately, his contributions were not leading to wins. Over the first 5 years of his career, the team could not find their footing. I mean, they were 26-54 to start his career. They relocated to St. Louis in 1995 and went through 3 coaching changes. It wasn't exactly the best of times for the franchise.
What was it like being there and then those guys show up? What was that season like for you?
Well, from 1994, being here in LA and then, making the transition to St. Louis, I took a lot of punches. Had some individual success, but as far as winning was concerned, I didn't experience much of it.
It may have been rough, but Bruce found a way to establish himself as the face of the Rams. Injuries and the losses prevented him from becoming a superstar early on, but he was definitely the best player on his offense at the end of 1998. And I make that distinction intentionally, because in 1999, everything would come together in what would become the most unlikely success story ever in the NFL. The Rams turned everything around all at once, and Isaac Bruce was a major part of it. But it was the offseason that had made the biggest difference. They traded for star running back Marshall Faulk with the Colts and signed what they thought would be a star QB, Trent Green. Isaac had to be hoping to finally be part of a winning team in the NFL, because losing year after year gets old. But then a preseason injury to Trent Green seemed like it would set the team back, and more losing was what they had to look forward to. Instead, insert Rams legend Kurt Warner, who took over the starting quarterback position. I'm sure you know who he is and his story, but with Kurt at the helm, the Rams offense exploded, and they became the greatest show on turf. Bruce was the team's steadying presence and provided continuity along with his special brand of leadership. After all, his star QB and running back just got to the franchise. Bruce's iconic moment came in the Super Bowl, where he caught a 73-yard game-winning touchdown to secure the Rams' first ever Lombardi Trophy. It's easily a top 5 play in Rams football history. And after 9 consecutive seasons with a losing record, it's hard to quantify what this win meant to the fan base. Head coach Dick Vermeil walked away from the Rams after the year. But they were set up in a great position, and of course, they would just keep winning, right? Well, of course not, because that's not how the NFL works. Mike Martz took over the team, and this isn't a video on him, but maybe one day I'll share my thoughts, and let's just say, I'm not the biggest fan. But as I said, this video isn't about him. From 1999 to 2006, Bruce had 6 1,000-yard seasons and caught 51 touchdowns. He played in one more Super Bowl, but lost. And he had settled in to being the second option for the team after 99. But this is what makes a guy like Isaac Bruce special. He never complained about becoming the second option at receiver. The Rams were contending, and he was surrounded by great offensive players. His stats mattered less than being part of a winning organization. Team success is what mattered to Bruce, but it also meant that he was overshadowed. Falk won an MVP, Holt set records, and Warner is the ultimate underdog and won 2 MVPs. Bruce, though, he quietly went about his business, being a leader on and off the field, as well as a very reliable option for what I consider to be the best offense of all time. Isaac Bruce's career should be defined by his consistency and humility. Over 16 seasons, he amassed 1,024 receptions, 15,208 receiving yards, and 91 touchdowns. At the time of his retirement, he ranked second all-time in receiving yards, behind only the Jerry Rice.
Pretty good.
But Bruce's impact for the Rams went well beyond the numbers. He was a master of impacting the game in ways that don't show up on the stat sheet. He was a precise route runner, had a very high football IQ, and he was also an excellent mentor for Torry Holt. Bruce could have been jealous of Holt, as it threatened his spot on the team, and eventually it made him the second receiver. But instead, he helped Torry and welcomed him to the team culture, and together they excelled. This speaks volumes about Isaac Bruce. His era included big personalities like Randy Moss and Terrell Owens, but for Bruce, he wasn't worried about who got the headlines. He wanted to win. Unfortunately for him, though, the Rams' winning ways would not continue throughout the 2000s, as the team let Kurt Warner go after he struggled for a few years, and Marshall Faulk was aging out of his prime. They still had Holt and Bruce, and added Steven Jackson at running back, but it was not enough to carry the team to success. After suffering through attempted rebuilds and restructures for a few seasons, Bruce decided to move on. He chose San Francisco and signed with the team on February 28, 2008. While it is the Rams' biggest rival, I really couldn't hold it against him. I mean, he had done too much for my favorite team. He would have decent numbers in one of the 2 years in San Francisco, but after 16 seasons, he decided to retire. His last move in the NFL was to be traded back to the Rams and retire as one of the franchise's legends, where he rightfully belonged. Here's what I believe you should remember about Isaac Bruce, if nothing else. His production and consistency were elite. He didn't have elite size. He didn't have elite speed, but what he did have was elite work ethic and a desire to improve his skills that he could work tirelessly on. His routes were crisp. His dedication to team success is unquestioned, and he turned this into consistent production, all while not making himself a distraction or being threatened by his talented teammates. Very few receivers have sustained excellence for as long as Bruce did, and fewer have handled going from face of the franchise to overlooked star as well as he did. His career numbers place him among the all-time greats, and his ability to perform in clutch moments, like his Super Bowl heroics, validate his willingness to step up when it mattered the most. Honestly though, the most elite thing that sets him apart is his humility and professionalism. Both of these were a model for what an NFL player should be. And both of these enabled the Rams to thrive during the greatest show on turf era. In a league often dominated by ego and controversy, Bruce was selfless, and he remained focused on his craft, earning well-deserved respect from his teammates and opponents alike. Where do you place Isaac Bruce among the all-time great wide receivers?
I was a young boy when I came into the National Football League, and to have someone like Isaac show me how to be a pro on a day-to-day basis helped take my career to a whole nother level.
Torry Holt, the St. Louis showstopper. No receiver had ever opened their career with a better 9-year run than Torry Holt from a yards produced standpoint. He even beat the clear wide receiving GOAT, Jerry Rice. Well, at least to start a career. But let's not get too far into that before we set the stage properly. Torry Holt's journey to NFL stardom began at North Carolina State, where he was a standout wide receiver. And by the time he left college, he was seen as a pro-ready wide receiving prospect. This means NFL scouts saw Holt as a player who could contribute immediately. In '99, the Rams selected him 6th overall, setting him up to be a key piece for a team that was about to take the league over. It seemed improbable that a team that hadn't won more than 7 games in the last 9 years would become an NFL powerhouse. But that is what happened. The Rams offense, led by Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, and Isaac Bruce, were able to take advantage of their talented rookie perfectly as they morphed into the greatest show on turf. Holt would live up to the pre-draft hype, as he posted over 780 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. And when it mattered most, he came up big, playing a major part in the Rams Super Bowl win. His stats were modest for the year, but remember, he was not the first or second option on a high-powered offense. And he was a rookie. Regardless of your talent, it takes time to adjust to the NFL. Holt would earn the nickname Big Game for his clutch performance when things mattered the most.
I'm the man. Big game, man. I got big game.
In that Super Bowl win, he caught 7 passes for 109 yards and a touchdown. The moment was never too big for Torry, even as a rookie. What followed for Holt was a stretch of dominance that few receivers in NFL history have ever been close to, and none, up to this point, had ever matched to start a career. From 2000 to 2007, he recorded 8 straight seasons with over 1,000 receiving yards, including 6 with at least 1,300. Not bad for a guy that started out as a third option. Holt wasn't just padding stats either. Over his time, he had become the best player on the Rams offense. He led the NFL in receiving yards twice, including a monstrous 1,696-yard campaign in 2003. Between 2000 and 2009, Holt accumulated more receiving yards than any player in the league. More than Randy Moss, more than Terrell Owens. It's even more impressive when you look back at who was in the league playing wide receiver during the 2000s. Take a look if you get a free moment, because there were absolute beasts playing wideout at the time. I have heard and seen comments that he was a system player, and this could partially be true. But remember, he did most of his work with Mark Bolger, not Kurt Warner.
Is this bad? Is this bad?
It feels like Warner, Falk, Bruce, and Holt played together for a decade, but essentially, it was a 3-year run. Holt, however, kept going long after the greatest show on turf era faded. But I also believe this is why he doesn't get the shine that he deserves, because as the team moved further into the 2000s, their fortunes turned. After the Super Bowl runs in '99 and '01, the team slowly fell into mediocrity, and Holt's brilliance became harder and harder to see on losing teams. By the end of 2004, the Rams weren't even contenders anymore. But even with this happening, Holt continued to produce at an elite level, even as his team struggled. At the time of his retirement, he was the fastest player ever to 10,000 receiving yards, and the fastest player to 11,000. But it didn't matter to those who weren't Rams fans, because without team success, stats can feel very empty. Holt had been mentored by Isaac Bruce, and he knew what a winning culture looked like, so he never became the type of player to become abrasive. And honestly, maybe he should have, but that's why Holt is part of this video, because he was not the type of player who would do that. Instead, he continued to be productive and do his part to help the team win, even if it didn't work. After a decade with the Rams, he would request and be granted his release on March 13, 2009. It was a sad day as a Rams fan, and only 1 year removed from Isaac Bruce leaving. Holt would spend a final season with the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2009, before quietly retiring after a knee injury prior to the 2010 season.
I knew that if I just stuck with it, kept my head down, just kept working, kept asking questions, watch the vets do it, keep working, I knew that I could do something really special with my career.
He finished his career with 920 receptions, 13,382 receiving yards, and 74 touchdowns. These are numbers that rival many Hall of Fame receivers, and are better than quite a few. Despite his impressive resume, Holt has yet to be inducted into the Professional Football Hall of Fame. Year after year, he's been a finalist, but he hasn't crossed the metaphorical finish line, which leaves many of us Rams fans scratching our heads. because he should definitely be in. And here's why. He had an incredible stretch of consistency and an extremely professional approach to the game. Few players in NFL history have maintained such a high level of production over a decade. Yardage-wise, no one had ever been as impressive. He's a Super Bowl winner, outpaced a Hall of Fame teammate at the position, and refused to make himself a distraction even as the franchise could not put a winning team on the field. What do you think? Should Torry Holt be in the Hall of Fame?
My deal was to come in when I was drafted 6th overall and play at a very high level for a very long time. And I was able to do that. So, I say, don't hold that against me because I played with other Hall of Fame greats. I still had to go out and do a job and do it really, really, really well.
Larry Fitzgerald, consistently excellent. Let's start with this mind-blowing fact about Fitz's career. He had more tackles than drops, and that's over
17 years.
But we should start by going back to where it all began, the University of Pittsburgh. Larry Fitzgerald made major waves in college, setting team records, earning a unanimous All-American selection, and becoming the runner-up for the Heisman in 2003. His ability to high-point the ball, haul in contested catches, and break tackles set him apart from other receivers at the collegiate level. It also didn't hurt that he had incredible production over his 2 seasons at Pitt, where he posted over 2,600 yards and 34 touchdowns. This included a sophomore season with over 1,600 yards and an insane 22 touchdowns. If we're being honest, he should have won the Heisman in 2003, and likely lost out because he was a receiver and sophomore. If you're wondering, it went to Jason White. Yeah, that's who won the 2003 Heisman Trophy. Fitzgerald wasn't the loud, brash star that many had come to expect at wide receiver in the NFL. He had a quiet confidence, and he spoke with his game rather than interviews or headlines. He may not have won the Heisman, but his talent could not be ignored, and the Cardinals would select him 3rd overall in 2004. He entered the league with sky-high expectations, but joined a team that had consistently underperformed. From 1975 to 2004, they made the playoffs twice. Yeah, you heard that right. Twice in 29 years, and only 4 times since the AFL-NFL merger in 1966. Not exactly a dynasty.
Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass. But they are who we thought they were.
Even with all this history, Fitzgerald's talent was undeniable, but his rise would be tied to a franchise that never found its identity. In just his 2nd season, he posted 103 catches for 1,409 yards and 10 touchdowns, made the Pro Bowl, but not an All-Pro team. And it makes sense, as the team was 5-11, but his numbers were every bit as good as anyone's in the league. This would become life as a Cardinal for Larry Fitzgerald. Consistent ability to produce regardless of quarterback or winning records became one of his calling cards. Over a 17-year career, he would catch touchdown passes from 16 different quarterbacks, play on teams with winning records 5 times, and see 5 different coaching regimes.
I know a guy who knows a guy who knows another guy.
But the reliable thing the Arizona Cardinals could count on was Larry. He posted 9 seasons with more than 1,000 receiving yards, made the Pro Bowl 11 times, the All-Pro team 3 times, and had double-digit touchdowns 5 times. It's pretty impressive how consistent he was, especially given all the uncertainty around him. But here's the thing though, while Fitzgerald was racking up over 17,000 career receiving yards, others were grabbing the national spotlight. Calvin Johnson, or Megatron as he was called, dominated conversations with his freakish athleticism, and other receivers with more over-the-top personalities drew the attention off the field. Fitzgerald, though, he was simply the consummate professional, and his approach is likely why he never got the same media attention as others in his peer group. Fitzgerald was a great route runner, had some of the best hands the NFL has ever seen, and an incredible level of durability. But even in his best moments, like the legendary 2008 playoff run, where he set records for receiving yards in a postseason, the focus quickly shifted to the amazing comeback of Kurt Warner or the Steelers' game-winning drive that sealed that Super Bowl. Not on Larry. Fitzgerald's 64-yard touchdown in that game should have been the defining play of his career, but ultimately, it was overshadowed. Would winning the Super Bowl have changed your opinion on Fitzgerald? Because it doesn't change mine. Let me know what you think though, because to me, he has the 2nd best career behind Jerry.
Oh, it's true.
It's damn true.
The other thing that kept Fitzgerald out of the spotlight was his understated demeanor. And we know this because his on-field performance has always been undeniable. I mean, the man posted 9 1,000-yard seasons, all while catching passes from 21 different quarterbacks. Think about that. 21 different quarterbacks. It didn't really matter who was throwing him the ball, though, because Fitzgerald just made plays. Would his numbers have been better with an elite quarterback? We'll never know, but I highly doubt it would have hurt. Even when Larry's speed began to decline later in his career, his football IQ and technique only improved. He would seamlessly transition from a deep threat to one of the most reliable slot receivers in the league, only proving his ability to evolve while staying dominant. The fact that he wasn't louder about his success only adds to the lore of it. Fitzgerald was never about self-promotion. He was about winning. He was about team. And he was about putting in the work. That's why he became such a respected figure in the NFL. One interesting note here. The Arizona Cardinals made the playoffs 4 times in Larry's career. That's the exact same number they had in nearly 40 years prior to his arrival. I'm not saying it was because of Fitz, but I'm also not saying it wasn't. The NFL world loves to hype up receivers who make noise, and the media loves talking about guys who demand attention both on and off the field. Maybe it's someone with a rare blend of size and speed. Maybe it's a player with highlight reel catches or off-field drama. Somehow, all of these things wind up demanding headlines. Fitzgerald, though, he was steady, reliable, and consistent, but he was never loud. In a different market like New York or Dallas, or on a team with a consistent quarterback like Peyton Manning, it's easy to imagine Fitzgerald being one of the faces of the league. But that's just not how it works. Great players get dealt bad hands all the time in the NFL. Where do you rank Larry Fitzgerald on your all-time list?
But like, there's something that's pulling you back, though, with football. I mean, is it unfinished business here?
Well, I have a lot of vast interest, but I started this. I've always wanted to be a champion. It's something that you compete for. You work so hard. Like, that desire, you just can't turn that off. It doesn't wake up one day and say, I have no desire to win a Super Bowl anymore.
If you had a Super Bowl win, would you?
That'd be a completely different story.
What? You wouldn't be back?
Most likely, no.
It's that important.
It's that important, yeah.
A.J. Green, outstanding but overshadowed. A.J. Green was a great wide receiver, but there was always someone else outshining him. Julio was in the SEC at the same time as him, and even in the same draft, picked just 2 spots after. AB was in the same division nearly every year Green was in Cincy, and it led to him being overshadowed often there. But let's start from the top. A.J. Green's rise began at the University of Georgia, where he was immediately recognized as one of the best wide receiver prospects in the country. His combination of size, speed, and leaping ability made him a nightmare for SEC defenses. Green's college career was pretty stellar, with 2,619 receiving yards and 23 touchdowns over 3 seasons. He was a consensus All-American and projected to be a top NFL draft pick. But there was one guy lurking in college who won a national championship at Alabama and was considered to be an equally impressive prospect, Julio Jones. In 2011, the Cincinnati Bengals selected Green 4th overall, pairing him with rookie quarterback Andy Dalton. And 2 spots later, the Atlanta Falcons took Julio Jones, pairing him with Matt Ryan. This is an important fact, as Julio and AJ will always be intertwined. From day one, Green proved he was special, as his rookie season would set the tone for what was to come, with over 1,000 receiving yards and a Pro Bowl selection. Over the next 7 seasons, A.J. Green was the epitome of consistency. He posted more than 1,000 receiving yards in 6 of those years, with the only exception being the byproduct of injuries. He made 7 straight Pro Bowls, a pair of All-Pro teams, and became the focal point of the Bengals offense. He had terrific chemistry with Andy Dalton, and it showed on the field. And for the first time in Bengals history, they made the playoffs for 5 straight seasons. They may have lost in the wild card round each year, but the consistency should not go unnoticed.
This is what I love, but you know what? Sometimes things you love don't always love you back.
Green's ability to make contested catches, run precise routes, and dominate in the red zone made him a reliable target in every situation. He posted more than 1,000 receiving yards in each of these playoff seasons, and double-digit touchdowns in 3 of the 5. He was a cornerstone of the team, but despite his incredible numbers, he rarely garnered the same level of attention as his peers. Maybe it's the fact that he was slightly less athletic than Julio. Maybe it's the fact that the Bengals never won one of these playoff games. Maybe it was that his peak was compared directly to the eccentric division rival he had. Whatever it is, I don't care, because I'm here to bring a little more attention to Green's career.
When we talk about the greatest receivers in the game, there are 3 names that continually come up. But you really are in that class. There are 4 receivers at this moment that have separated themselves from the rest of the pack, and yet I'm guilty of this too. Your name somehow gets left off. There's Antonio Brown and Julio Jones and Odell Beckham Jr. The way you guys have been playing recently, it's you. You're the 4th guy in that pack. Why do you think your name gets left off?
I don't know. You look at my numbers, better than all of them up there, a lot of them. But like I said, I don't look at that stuff. I know I can do. I know I bring to the table every Sunday.
The 2010s were a golden era for wide receiver, and A.J. Green's career unfolded alongside some of the most dynamic pass catchers the NFL has ever seen. We already mentioned Julio Jones a few times, as he was Green's college rival, and in the NFL, Jones was often viewed as the more dominant physical force. Antonio Brown was making big plays for Green's rival, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he had a larger-than-life personality that made him a media darling. Well, at least back then. Odell Beckham Jr. had one-handed catches, played in New York City, and his off-field antics captivated fans and the media alike. But Green quietly went about his business, putting up elite numbers and helping the Bengals reach the playoffs over and over again. Was it his fault the Bengals didn't win playoff games? Maybe partially, as his numbers were lackluster in the games, but he was definitely not the specific cause for them. Cincinnati's lack of postseason success and the absence of a moment worth mentioning during those games only pushed Green further out of the national conversation. Unlike players who thrived on bigger stages, Green never had a signature playoff moment to solidify his legacy in the eyes of casual fans. Unfortunately for Green, it never came either, as injuries would begin to take their toll on Green in 2018. He missed 7 games that year, the entirety of 2019, and he came back clearly in a different stage of his career in 2020. Joe Burrow showed up after the Bengals had gone through a tough period, but Green was ready to move on by this stage, and he signed with the Arizona Cardinals in 2021, where he had a productive season, but by then, his prime years were behind him. After a lackluster 2022, Green would retire prior to the 2023 season. Unfortunately, the last 5 years were marred by injury issues, and this may be what fans remember him for, rather than the great start his career had. All in all, Green finished his career with over 10,500 receiving yards and 70 touchdowns, putting him solidly in the top receivers of his generation. What makes A.J. Green's career so fascinating is how quietly impactful he was. He wasn't just a good player. He was one of the best of his generation, but without the flash, social media presence, or playoff heroics that define some of his peers, Green's greatness goes unnoticed. What do you think led to Green being overlooked? Was it the depth of talent? Was it the lack of playoff success? Or was it his quiet demeanor? Maybe it was all 3.
Over the last bunch of years, there's been Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, and Odell Beckham Jr. Those 3 are always in everyone's top 4. And first it was Dez Bryant, and now it's DeAndre Hopkins. But in between, people are so easily forgetting about A.J. Green, who's just about as good as anyone you ever want to see play that position.
Mike Evans, outshined superstar. In order to understand how Evans ended up being overlooked, let's start with where he first got outshined, and that's Texas A&M. The Aggies were newcomers to the SEC, and they were about to take college football by storm. A big part of that was Evans, but the most attention-grabbing piece of that was his quarterback, Johnny Manziel. The brash QB won a Heisman Trophy, brought national spotlight that A&M hadn't seen in a long time, and lived as fast off the field as he did on it. His secret to success, though, was the dominant 6'5" receiver that this part of our list is about. Evans would rack up nearly 2,500 yards and 17 touchdowns, and his breakout performance came in 2013 against Alabama, where he put up 279 yards and a TD. The team lost, but the young wideout launched himself into the national conversation with this performance.
Yes! That's awesome!
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers selected him 7th overall in 2014. He was the second wide receiver off the board, being taken 3 spots behind Sammy Watkins. Watkins didn't work out as planned, but Mike did. From the moment Evans entered the league, he made an impact and would start a streak of 1,000-yard seasons that lasted a decade and is still ongoing. But in his rookie year, it was 1,051 yards and 12 touchdowns that stamped his name as a future star. While many other players flashed brilliance for a season or two, Evans has made consistency his calling card. He's the only player in NFL history to begin his career with 10 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons, and one of only 3 players to accomplish it at any point in their career. It's a testament to his durability and consistency. His big play ability is unquestioned, and he has had several clutch moments over the years. Over 9 playoff games, he has 45 catches, over 700 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Despite this incredible production, Evans hasn't received the same fanfare as other receivers like Tyreek Hill, Michael Thomas, or even Stephon Diggs. And it could be because while those guys caught quite a few passes from the likes of Mahomes, Breeze, and Josh Allen, Evans hasn't had that caliber of QB for most of his career. And this, I believe, is one of the reasons Evans was overlooked for so long. Jameis was winging the ball around, but he was never a top-tier quarterback in the NFL, and that was his signal caller for 5 of his first 6 seasons. But then, Tom Terrific would show up in 2020, and in an epic turnaround for the team, they went on to win a Super Bowl that year. Evans was a critical part of this playoff run, but let's not pretend like the 6 years of losing that he had just suffered didn't lead to the star wideout being overlooked. Of course it did. Now, though, he had become a Super Bowl champ.
1 catch, 1 Super Bowl ring.
And that's what I'm saying. You're smiling exactly because you don't care about the stats. You finally got that ring. Hey, man, 4 times in your first 6 seasons, you finished last. Did you ever think that you would see this day?
When we got Tom, I knew it was a possibility for sure.
The Bucs might not have won big games or made the playoffs early in Evans' career, but winning can cure all. Tampa Bay hasn't missed the playoffs since 2020.
Pretty good.
The final factor in Evans being overlooked could just be that his quarterbacks have always been extremely big personalities. Johnny Manziel was a larger-than-life college superstar. Jameis was entertaining, if nothing else. And Tom Brady, as much as I personally hate to admit it, may be the biggest NFL star ever. Not to mention, Baker is a media magnet. Mike Evans, though, he's not a diva wide receiver. He just puts up numbers, consistently. But what do you think? Is Mike Evans overlooked? Or is he simply a player that puts up consistent numbers that lack the impact of true superstars at the position?
And me and him had that relationship that was like special. Wow. And it'll never be taken from us. You know, I can sit here and talk to him and still do the same signals as 12 years later. I can throw a peace sign, he's gonna go to the crib, right? Is what that means every time. So, you know, to have a special bond with somebody like that, that kid, that guy, that man, means the fucking world to me.
Wide receiver is a position with a certain stigma, and that is that you make big plays, capture headlines, and act out. Just like everything else, though, it's not a monolith. The players on this list are quiet superstars who helped their teams win games and did it without being distractions. Presenting stories is part of the game, and it's easier to tell the stories that are the loudest. But I made this to celebrate some of the quieter ones, because sometimes the best players are the ones who simply show up, do their job, and let their performance speak for them. This has been the Unlikely Success.
The article came out and we're not mentioned.
What?
It's a bullshit piece on the usual assholes. He compares them to philosophers.